I don't know if what you can see in the background here, but I just got off the tractor, chiseling and disking the field, getting it ready for a nice cover crop and some veggies for this year.
Fantastic. And you're dressed for success.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Farming success.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So hey,
So this is our
tell us what.
last episode of season 1 of Move Your Farm Store Online. This is, I think, the 6th episode that we've done, and because there's starting to be conflicting farm life type things going on with this evening event, we've decided to wrap things up nice and sweet.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, and then we'll debrief. And our idea was to come back in the fall, and we'll obviously keep you guys posted on what we decide on that side of things.
Yeah.
But it's really been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, meeting with you, Dan, each week, and just diving into these topics, and also just seeing the response from people, and just hearing, every now and then someone will be like, "Oh, I saw you and Dan on Facebook." I was like, "Oh, wow, people are actually, watching this and getting stuff out of it." So thank you to everyone who's made this possible in the community.
Yeah, no, it's been a real pleasure also chatting with you. It's fun to have somebody to bounce things back and forth between and kind of get the ideas a little bit deeper, and somebody to brainstorm with. And also thank you to all the viewers who've been watching and sending in comments and emails and stuff. That's been really exciting to be part of that. And I know some of you have taken off with your online stores, so congratulations, and that's pretty awesome too.
Mm-hmm.
And so that brings us to us, John. So what have you been up to lately?
Yeah, well, I'm launching a farm, and so I guess this brings us to the next topic, which I guess the guest for this week is me.
So you're the guest. So John Breuerlein, welcome to Move Your Farm Store Online. Why don't we start off with you setting the stage and tell us a bit about your previous farming experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a farm in the eastern townships of Quebec, about an hour southeast of Montreal, an hour and a half. And we were farming using a mix of horsepower and tractor power. So we had 4 big Belgian draft horses and an 80 horsepower tractor. And we were doing about 6.5 acres of vegetables, marketing into Montreal, CSA. About half our production went to CSA for a total of 250 members. And the other half went to farmers markets in various sort of configurations, either just us at the market or also 2 cooperative farmers markets that we helped were founding members of.
And so how long did you do that for?
We did that for 7 going on 8 years. So basically, we graduated university. I met my wife at university, and our final project, independent study final project, was the business plan and the crop plan. And we came out, we worked at Orchard Hill Farm with Ken and Martha Lang for a summer together. Obviously we had previous experience before that, but just to say, came out, worked the summer on the farm together, and then the next year we just launched into the business at 22 years old, and we just got into it for 8 years and built it up. And I had this vision that we were going to have that 100-acre farm with the horses and the cows and the sheep and the veggies and everything in rotation, just this perfect system like I'd seen at the Langs. And yeah, if that was going to cost $300,000, well, so be it. We'll just make the business work. And things go along, and it's not 300, it's 400, 500, 600, 800, because land prices keep going up and projects keep getting bigger. And we were in Quebec, so the government agency that handles credit was like, "Yeah, go for it. You can take on a $1 million loan, do it." And they're and then and my wife was like, "Hey, well, what if we sold everything and went for an adventure instead?" And I was just like, "Oh my God, what are you talking about? We've built up this business. We are ready. We're raking it in. Anyway, we're financially successful. We're poised to purchase a farm, and yet I sort of let that simmer and was like, you know what? Yeah, makes a lot of sense. We're only young once, and we have all this experience that is absolutely not lost." And so we let the lease go. We sold all our horses and tractors and all the equipment, and we turned our Sprinter into our delivery truck into a camper. And we set off on the road and traveled around the U.S. and Canada for 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, meeting farmers, just amazed by the hospitality. We didn't pay for camping once in 3 years. We just went somewhere and looked on Google Maps, organic farm, and found someone and just hey, can we come by your farm? Oh yeah, of course, and just met some wonderful people. And then we got back to Quebec, and the question was like, okay, well, we realized we don't want to live in the countryside anymore, but we do want to farm. So how are we going to live in the city with a 50-acre backyard? And one of our friends, Robin Turner, was working at the NCC, which is the National Capital Commission here in Ottawa. They manage all the federal real estate basically in Ottawa, and they happen to have 15,000 acres of farmland. And so we looked into that, and we've been looking for about a year, and finally found a property that suits our liking. And so here we are, ready to launch our second farm. And as you can tell, I've been pretty busy. For those of you who just joined us, the reason I'm so dirty is because I've just been, chiseling and disking that field back there, getting ready for some planting.
And if anybody's just joined us, please write a comment to say hi, to ask any questions, say any comments, yeah. So I'm interviewing Jonathan Bruderline, our fantastic guest this evening, and he's been telling us a little bit about where he came from and starting getting into this new project. So right. So now you're taking this lease on at this land just outside of Ottawa, and what is this project going to be?
Yeah, so we're going to be growing a mix of cut flowers and vegetables. The vegetables are going to be sold at our farm store and through home deliveries using our online store, and the flowers are going to be sold a bit on online to retail customers, but mainly to wholesale clients in Ottawa and Montreal.
That sounds very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a privilege to start a farm from scratch, but with a decade's worth of experience, plus 2 years of experience working with other farmers as their coach and their consultant. And so really getting into it and saying like, okay, well, this is my chance to start fresh on this project. And so what would I do differently, and what would I do the same?
And so, I mean, we could talk about a lot of stuff that you just dropped right on us right there, and that's really exciting. But this is the show called Move Your Farm Store Online, so I'm going to be moving us away from all those fantastic conversations. And as a transition question, I'll ask you. So you've been planning this farm out for a little bit, but 8 weeks ago or so, COVID-19 comes along, and how has that affected your idea of what you were going to be doing marketing-wise this summer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's well, first of all, I just want to say it really made me wish, like, geez, I wish I had this farm 6 months ago and I'd be ready with crops in the ground now, rather than disking, chiseling, and trying to get crops in for the 1st of June, right? So first of all, just want to get that out of the way. But really, what it's done is, it's highlighted the importance of home deliveries, and the fact I guess it brought out an opportunity that was already obvious, but that I hadn't seen, and that is that we are, 1.5 kilometers. We are 1 mile from the residential neighborhoods, right? We are literally a 5-minute drive from the urban areas of Ottawa. And so what that does is it makes the economics of home delivery a whole lot more interesting. And so with COVID, and what I realized talking with you and also talking with Noah, who I work with Noah as a consultant, we're both consultants together also, is just that online purchasing is here to stay. It is the future, it is the current mode of choice of consumers. And so that's really made me think, hey, I really need to focus on the online store and getting ready to serve those people.
And so you're new to the online store world, and that's part of the reason that you came on to this with me, is that I'd be the person who has 10 years of experience. You'd be the person who is jumping into this and has the beginner's mind. And so we've been talking about this for 6 weeks. You've been hearing me say all kinds of things. Other people say things. You've been reading all the comments. What platform did you choose to use for your online store?
Oh, good question. And I chose to go with, drum roll, Shopify.
Wow.
Yeah, surprising. I know. I've only been influenced by you, but yeah. So I decided to go with Shopify. Basically, it came down. I was looking at. It's not like I looked at everything. I sort of just said, well, what are my top 3 choices? and I was looking at Barn to Door, Gray's Cart, and Shopify, and I decided to go with Shopify. Um, because I decided I was going to need a bilingual site,
Hmm.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, Ottawa's is in Ontario in Canada, and though it is a predominantly Anglophone province, there's still a lot of French speakers, francophones, who are who do live in the Ottawa area.
Right. And Ottawa is on the Quebec border, and just over the bridge is Gatineau, which is, you know, it's like the Twin Cities, you know. Well, I don't know exactly if the relationship is like that, but there's a whole nother city just across the river, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And they all speak French, and it's in Quebec. And so, yeah, really, basically, the need, essentially, listening to you and talking with Noah, I realized, like, yeah, Shopify may not be perfect, but you know what? No platform is perfect. And so the only reason I would have gone with a different platform is this idea of like, oh, it's too complicated, and it's going to be easier to just set it up in another platform. And so that brings me to this week, which I actually finally started setting up my online store and just realizing, like, wow, this is fun. Like, this is really exciting. Like, uploading products and choosing a theme and doing the settings and all that. Like, I find it really fun, and I find it really, like, I'd been using WordPress for a number of years, but I am by no means a computer person. Like, I can get along, but I'm not a programmer, and WordPress has always been like a little frustrating to me. And so coming into Shopify, I was like, oh my God, this is so much easier than WordPress. And yeah, I can totally do this. I can totally do this.
And so, is there anything that surprised you about this process that kind of brought you to this mindset?
Yeah, I guess anything that surprised me. Yeah, I think what surprised me was that it was more user friendly than I was imagining. Um, and the other thing I do want to mention is that I decided to hire Noah, who was on the show a couple weeks ago, um, to work with him, like, as my consultant in setting up this online store. And so I know I could have figured it out by myself, but I wanted to basically take a shortcut. I basically wanted to. Um, is that weird, or I don't know what that looks like on your
You
end?
look perfectly normal, John.
Perfectly normal. Great. That's always what I'm aiming for. Yeah, so I decided to, rather than going through the trial and error phase, I decided to hire a consultant, that being Noah, and just really get into it and say, like, look, I don't want you to do the whole work because I don't want to spend thousands of dollars on this project, but let's, I anticipate between 5 and 10 hours of work with Noah to really get this off to the right start and sort of turbocharge our launch.
And so, in that process, how is Noah guiding you through what you're doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, we sat down and put together. He's done this multiple times, so there's a degree of ease with which together we can lay out the project timeline, right? Like, so what are the different elements that are essential, fundamental to getting the store launched? What are those elements that are secondary and can come after the launch? And to really just lay out those steps, the sort of order of operations, so to speak, in terms of choosing the theme, customizing the theme, choosing what kinds of settings, um, and then uploading products and everything that goes along with that. So I think that that's something that was really helpful to just know, like, okay, these are the steps we're going to need to be following to get there. And it's something I would have figured out on my own once again, but I just got, in 15-minute conversation, boom, we had the project laid out. And then after that, basically asking him about themes. So like, all right, for this kind of project, what would be the top three or four themes that you would recommend? And then going through, and he already had some analysis done, and sort of I took his criteria and just did a little research of my own, and just to help me sort of guide in terms of which theme to go with, which I've decided to go with Retina by Out of the Sandbox. But yeah, so that's essentially, how we've worked so far, and then looking at through the product, um, the CSV file to upload, just going through line by line, being like, okay, what does each column mean? So that then I can just sort of take that shortcut and already know what I need to be thinking about and how I need to be configuring that.
So that sounds pretty exciting. What's been the most challenging in this process?
Um, the most challenging has nothing to do with setting up the online store, and is simply just creating a brand identity and learn and being able to communicate that clearly, right? So the online store side of things has actually been pretty simple. The like what how do we describe ourselves? What words do we use? What images do we use? That's the part that I'm finding still challenging.
Hmm. And
But
is
that's
this
the part that you're going to need to think about, whether you just have a straight, simple website or whether you're having an online store. Except that with an online store, like that, for many people, that is going to be the main way that they interact with our farm. And so, if we're delivering to their home and we're not even seeing each other, the website all of a sudden becomes much more, in my opinion, important. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What do you think about that, Dan?
um I don't think you're wrong, but I do think that people tend to um, overestimate the importance of all the copy on your website.
Mm,
I think that if your website's a store, what they're trying to do is purchase stuff from you. They might want to poke around and find out a little bit about you, but they're basically want to purchase stuff from you. And I know our store, like we've had our current site. How long has it been? So we have two sites. We have the Shopify site and we have a WordPress site. And the WordPress is a static site that mainly talks about our vegetable basket program. And that's about 6 years old. And the Shopify site is about 3 years old. And the Shopify doesn't really have much copy in terms of about page and all that. That's all on the WordPress site. The Shopify is really just a store. And it's mainly seeds. But this 6-year-old WordPress site, it's really getting out of style a little bit. Like when we did it, it was kind of like the latest and greatest stuff, and we had a lot of content. And now we have content that's aged, that's a couple years old. We have some stuff that highlights things that happened a couple years ago, or staff that we had a couple years ago, and we've been wanting to get around to changing it, but we're also kind of talking about a major overhaul. So haven't put a lot of investment in the small things, but nobody emails us or tells us, oh, this is out of date. Like our CSA has been full. We're selling a lot of seeds, and I think that people come in and they go quickly to the places they want to go, and they're not looking to see a lot about our background or media references from us, or like they seem to be looking at what's in a vegetable basket? Where can I pick it up? How much does it cost? How much does I sign up? Where are the carrot seeds? And so one thing that we do get complaints about is we don't have as much growing information as people would like on our online seed store. And I think that's something that if we had more of that, that might convert more sales, as opposed to being a little bit slicker in the site, on the online site store. So just having something that works and has products that can someone can click on and get to a checkout basket and fill up with all kinds of wonderful seeds, to have a beautiful garden. Like they can do a lot of the dreaming without you having to write all the stuff. Now, I'm not saying other stuff doesn't make a difference, but having that site that works is the most important thing.
Right. Having that sort of what they call like minimal viable offering, right? That thing, that site that's just like good enough, get out the door and start improving it as you go, basically.
And when you were
go for it.
saying that Noah was talking about things to do first and things to do later, this is the stuff that it was making me think of is like just get the framework, get the main products that you want to be selling on there, and then you can add in a fancier about page. Then you can add in a tagline. Then you can add in all this other stuff that isn't vital. Whereas if you didn't have a theme, as you mentioned, and you didn't have products, and you didn't have hooked up to a payment method, you wouldn't be able to get sales.
Hmm.
And
Hey Dan, how did you go about choosing a theme?
um,
Or do you have any or what are your thoughts on that? Because I think that, so far we've been talking about this sort of like high level move your store online, but now that I'm getting into it, I realize I have more detailed sort of questions. And so because there's a lot of themes out there. So what are your thoughts on that?
so it's been 3 years, and so I don't specifically remember the process I went through. I think I think Shopify has a number of themes that they've built in-house, and I think I chose to go with one of those because I knew that they would support it well. And I was looking for something that was going to get up and running quickly without having to worry about things not working some funny way. And then I knew we'd be using the Langify app, and so I think I looked for a theme that'd be compatible with that. So I think those are two of the big things. And then so we were predominantly an online store, and we'd had online stores before, and we had a certain way that we classified things, by crop and by vegetable seed or herb seed. And so I think what I would do now, this is probably what I did then, is I would look first if there's something that navigates the same way as what we were doing before, the stuff that we liked before, and work with that. Now, I know that themes have changed in the last few years, and I just redid my my personal blog page, and things are there's a lot more responsiveness, and there's a lot more ease of moving things around in some of the newer themes, and even just a year or two makes a big difference. But I think looking for something that can go multilingual is definitely probably number one if you're going to go multilingual, and then two, how folks are going to navigate places. And, do you need to have a menu bar? Do you want to have a couple of them? And do you need sidebars? How that's going to work is some of the stuff that I would look for. But what are things that guided your decision?
Yeah, basically I was looking at Retina, Avenue, and Providence. And first of all, I just want to say those are all three paying, like you need to pay for those. They're between $140 and $180 for the theme. And basically what Noah was saying, and sort of intuitively goes along with what I was thinking, is you get what you pay for, right? So that $200 investment is well worth that money. And so what I was looking for, first of all, was reviews. Looking at reviews, looking at how often and how recently the theme had been updated by the company that produced it. Looking at reviews specifically relating to support and customer relations, and looking a little bit, there was one that certain companies have better reputations than others, and so looking at the reputation of the developer and the company that's produced the theme that's all the first criteria that I was looking at. Secondly, for sure, nowadays it's almost standard, but just to double check that it's a theme that's responsive to mobile. So that means that when you're not on a desktop, does it look normal on a cell phone or on a tablet? So that was super important. Another criteria that I think is really important, for me anyway, is to have an in-house pop-up functionality that works well. Because apparently, at least anyway, from what Noah was telling me, the MailChimp pop-up app, like it works, but it's not the best. So that's something that's important to me. And so just for those of you who don't know, pop-up is that annoying little window that comes up and says, hey, would you like to get on my mailing list? And so while, yes, sometimes we're annoyed by that kind of little pop-up, it is also a very effective way of getting people in the loop so that they can stay up to date with what's happening at the farm and how to get your stuff, my stuff. And so that's the second thing I was looking for. And yeah, and then basically you can go on and you can say, try this theme. And so it'll load it to your Shopify backend, and you can see all your content as if it was through that theme, and just play around looking at how the different functionalities work. I was looking for drop and click and drag types things, so that you can arrange how the different blocks are presented on the page. That was something that was important to me. I don't know if that's standard, but perhaps it is. I'm a novice at this, but yeah. So those were the things. So really for me anyway, like reputation and reliability of the theme. What kind of preloaded functionality does it have? And then in terms of presentation, yes, that's important, but so much of that can be customized. That wasn't like the first thing, but it was a secondary consideration, because the less customization I need to do, the faster I can have it up and running, and the cheaper I can have it up and running.
Yeah, you've got me excited for maybe exploring some other themes as we're going to another version. As we kind of maybe phase out of our WordPress, maybe wonder whether Shopify might have some of the needs to meet all of our website needs, and maybe a paid theme is the way for us to go. Yeah, you mentioned the customization. One of the things that we've done is we've worked with, so we've done almost all our Shopify stuff in-house, but we did have sometimes individual little coding things that were just beyond what I could do, or what I could do quickly. And there was we've been working with these developers called what are they called? They're called Hey Carson, and they let you pay by what they call the task. And I can't remember the rate, but it was something like, it's either maybe it's $40 or $50 US. And so that they'll do one thing to your site. So you could say, I need this menu bar here, or I need. I think one of the things we changed was it was a drop-down menu that would appear for the items, and we wanted to be radial buttons, so you could kind of see everything and then just click what you want. And so we've every now and then we'll have them just customize something, and because like, I mean, it's a little bit slower now than the COVID time, but generally we'd send them, something through their task list or the task manager, and then within a day or two they'd have a mock-up, and we could check it out, and then if it worked, they would publish it, and it's up and running. And so a lot of what we did was just working through stuff like that to kind of just tweak the things that weren't quite working the way that we wanted. So that was kind of in terms of customization. It was an easy way to go with it, go without having to invest a lot in a web person to do extra stuff. But I'm excited by what you're talking about, and I'm not sure if there was as much drag and drop or click and drop options available 3 or 4 years ago. I know that it seems to be more common just across the board in all these different sites nowadays, and so those are kind of exciting to be able to see things. Though there's also some good practices to set up a website also, so you don't want to be too crazy, and kind of it's nice to follow sometimes a format or a template, and put stuff the places that they recommend to put them.
Right. Yeah. And so I guess this is sort of, I want to loop back on what I was talking about copy earlier today, about that being my biggest challenge. And I think the challenge that I'm experiencing around copy is not how do I generate lots of copy that's really descriptive and great. It's rather, how do I keep it really short and simple? And I think that's one of the things that I see some farms websites is like a big narrative, and and going on and on about the grandparents and the this and the soil and the earth, and and that's all good for like maybe a blog, right, or something like that, and but not for a landing page. I subscribe to the Donald Miller idea that you need to keep it really simple, right? Like, people are trying to figure out what is it you do with the fewest brain calories possible. So what I'm looking at is, how do I sum up what I do in one sentence, essentially, right? Like how is it that people can land on the page and be like, oh, that's what this is about. Great. What's the next action? Order now? Oh yeah, sure. Boom. That's what I'm looking for on my site, is not a lot of description. It's not a lot of, I'll have a blog, I'll have stuff elsewhere, but really what on the landing page, it's, what is it that we do, and what's the next action that I need them to do? Either sign up to my mailing list, or buy some veggies.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. And I think when I was talking about our older WordPress site, there are places that are like copy bombs, that there's just a lot of information thrown at you. But we've been trying to just trim down the main landing page or some of the key pages to just show people what they might want to be choosing from and get them to where they want to go. Because they're on your site or on our site for a reason. So we want to help them get to that place.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's true. And by the time they've made it to the website, it's that they, it's like, this is someone who's engaging. This is different from someone who's just, maybe on your mailing list or on social media. This is someone who's went out of their way to go to your website, and then just to make it as easy and this idea of friction, right? What are the friction points along the way, and how can we remove as much friction as possible?
Yeah, make it a smooth experience for the people who want to support you.
Right. And that's one of the ways that we can provide value, right? Like I've over the last couple of years, I've been thinking like, how do local farms produce value, right? So yes, there's the vegetables, the freshness, the quality of the vegetables. That being said, I've had this interesting experience of being a consumer and not being a farmer and being like, oh, well, you know what? That stuff I was saying about how horrible the veggies in the grocery store are is actually no longer true, or I don't know if it's ever been true. Anyway, I've really been surprised over these last 2 years. Like, grocery stores have vegetables that are delicious also. I know they have some really bad stuff too, but my previous life and my previous farm, I was like, yeah, my veggies are like the best. Like we're gonna blow the grocery store out of the water, but like, I've discovered that's not the case now that I've been on the consumer side for a couple of years. And so that's one of the things that's got me thinking, okay, well, beyond the freshness and the amazing, delicious, nutrient-dense vegetables we're growing, how else do we create value? And I think one of the ways we create value is convenience and simplicity for our clients. And so that's really one of the things that I'm trying to work into this new business is how can I make this enjoyable for the client who has lots of other stuff, and at the same time create that sense of engagement and loyalty and commitment.
That sounds like a great place to be working from, and it sounds like a great online store is a great tool to help that simplicity and get people, make their life a little bit easier.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Especially now, I think, and that coming back to your question about how has COVID changed my new farm, is my new farm's orientation, and it's really along that line. It's like, yeah, people have a lot on their plate. And what can we do as farmers to support our community? We're always, there's this notion of community-supported agriculture, and that's a two-way street. And any good business that is of value to their, to the marketplace is doing that because they're supporting some community at a certain level. And yes, there's those exceptions. We can all name them, but fundamentally, that's what business is about, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's a fantastic insight to bring to the conversation.
Right. And to move away from, and I'm just talking from my own personal, my past attitude, right? Move away from this, like, oh, people need to like support my farm because I'm a small scale, local, organic farmer. They should support me. You know what? I should support them. And if I support them well enough, they're going to give me money. If I create enough value for them, they're going to give me their money, and my business is going to be successful. And that's why I've decided to move my farm store online.
So you've made a decision. You've told us a bit about how you how you've chosen Shopify, how you're setting up, the steps that you're going through.
Yeah.
Now you've just moved onto this land, and you'll only be marketing in the fall, or that was the plan. The last plan you've told me.
Yeah, late summer.
So what are the next steps with your online store?
I mean, my very next step is, like we were saying, having that minimum level where it's up, it's functional, it's operational, and I'm selling subscriptions. And basically CSA shares. So I would like to get that up and rolling, and creating that web presence well ahead of my target date where I want to start really selling like for real, right? So having it up at least, I wish I had earlier, but at least a couple months in advance, so that it is, you know, Google is recognizing it as being a real site, for instance, right? Like that these things that when you put a website up, it takes a little time for you to come onto the radar screen. And so that's the next step, is getting the store up and starting to create content through blog posts, through products, and coming onto the Google radar screen, essentially.
Yeah. And so, are you about ready to launch, or is it still a couple more weeks, or is it, do you have a tentative date?
Yeah,
No
I'd love to
commitment
get
here.
it. Yeah, no commitment. I'd love to have it up by May 25th. That's what I
May
would
25th.
love, but I that might be a little bit tight of a tight time frame, given that I have a lot of other projects on the go as well. So we'll see how that plays out.
Which is why you're talking to us from your field with a flashlight.
Yeah. Sorry about this, folks, but this is just how it worked out here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So,
Well, hey, one thing I do want to mention is we talked about SKUs, we talked about product codes and all that a while back. And so I just want to loop in on, I think that was episode 2 or 3 or something along the way. And I want to talk about that it has been really interesting. One of the things I'm doing is going through and creating my whole system ahead of time rather than having to invent it as I go, so that there's a certain logic to my product codes, and that I'm creating all the items I hesitate to say that I'm ever going to want to sell, but I'm creating a spreadsheet with all the vegetable items that I anticipate wanting to sell, whether or not I even think I'm going to have them this year or not, so that I can structure it ahead of time in a way that makes sense in terms of product codes. So it's going to be listed in that order when I'm printing out my invoices, but also just to have it done, to have it ready and loaded, so that when that opportunity to make some sales comes along, I already have it done up front. And it's the type of thing that when you're doing it in a spreadsheet format, it's so much quicker than doing it one by one. So there's the time difference between, oh, should I do sweet potatoes or not? Like, I just did it. I have everything loaded in there with a price, everything's up. So.
mm-hmm. I love that. That's
right.
I like that.
Right. And I've chosen while we're on the topic, I've chosen a 5-digit product code. So basically it's gonna, the first 2 digits is like a category. So like, is it a root vegetable, fruit, greens, so on. So essentially I have 9 categories that are representing the first 2 digits, and then and then there's a dash, and then 3 other numbers, and that's the actual product code. And one thing I've made sure to do is to leave lots of space in between. So I realized with the 3 digits to indicate the product, I've got lots of space. I'm not going to end up with 999 products, so I might as well space them out ahead of time rather than having them all clumped in, which will allow me time, space to grow into the future.
That sounds phenomenal and
right.
wise. And so I see that you're losing daylight.
Yeah. So maybe today we could make it a little bit of a shorter episode. How about that, Dan?
That sounds like good. So is there anything that you want to end season 1 on?
End season 1 on? Yeah, I guess just word of encouragement to everyone out there, and want to say, like, let's stay in touch through this Facebook page.
That sounds great. Yeah. So neither Jon or I are going to disappear. We're just not going to be appearing on weekly on Thursdays. But I'll still keep an eye on the Facebook page and post occasionally. And if you have questions or if you have answers, please post away. This is there's a lot of different steps of an online store. There's getting it up, but then there's optimizing and keeping it going. And I think all those things are great topics to talk about here. So I look forward to more conversation, and with you too, Jon.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's one thing that could be really interesting is if we are if people have questions and challenges and celebrations during the summer, to be posting it, to be sharing that. It can get lonely running a business, and so the fact of having multiple people in it can be really good. And anyway, I'd love to get people's feedback, because I think there could be an interesting sort of group dynamic we could create in the fall of like, okay, well, what worked for small farms in 2020 regarding to online marketing, and how do we collectively move things forward for the next year?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a really good goal. So thank you so much, John, for going through this adventure with me this last month and a half, and
Hmm.
I really appreciate it. And thank you to all the Move Your Farm Store online community for participating, and I appreciate that also.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you in a couple months.
So have a great evening and happy farming.
Yeah, happy farming. Take care, folks.